Hello, today I'm going to be sharing a few facts about Ida B. Wells. Ida Bell Wells Barnett was born on July 16, 1862, in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Her parents were Elizabeth and James Wells. 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 5th, today I'm going to be sharing a few facts about Ida B. Wells. Ida Bell Wells Barnett was born on July 16, 1862, in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Her parents were Elizabeth and James Wells. 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 5th, today I'm going to facts about Ida B. Wells. Ida Bell Wells Barnett was born on July 1862, in Holly, Mississippi. Her parents were Elizabeth and James Wells. 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1862. Hello, today I'm going to be sharing Ida Bell Wells Barnett. She was born into slavery on July 16, 1862, in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Her parents were Elizabeth and James Wells. 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, slavery ended in 1865. After the Civil War, James and Elizabeth Wells decided to stay on the farm where they had always lived. Now they could learn to read and write and get an education, when before that was illegal. Ida loved school. She got good grades and read every book she could find. Her dad and his friends would often listen to her reading the newspaper. Her dad wanted her to see how powerful the newspaper articles could be. In the summer of 1878, Ida went to visit her grandmother outside of Holly Springs. Sadly, when she came back, she found out that both her parents and her youngest brother had died from yellow fever. When she got back from Holly Springs, she overheard family members trying to separate her and her siblings. She thought, how could they do that? So she decided to get a job as a teacher. Even though she was 16, she decided to have her aunt help her lower the hems on her dress and put her hair up to make her look older. During her leisure time, she worked as a journalist under the pen name Iola. After 2 years of teaching, Ida's Aunt Fanny invited Ida and her two sisters to move to Memphis with her. She jumped at the chance of leaving Mississippi. In Memphis, she and her friends went to plays, concerts, and church. She also joined a book club called Lyceum. Lyceum had its own newsletter called the Evening Star. Then, when the editor moved away, he chose Ida to take his place. On Friday nights, she would read it aloud. One of those Friday nights, a minister heard her, and he was so impressed that he decided to have her write a column for his weekly newspaper called The Living Way. Most of the women wrote about marriage, children, and running a household, but instead, Ida wrote about how badly Black people were treated by white people. During this time, Ida worked at a school just north of Memphis. Ida enjoyed working at the free speech office. To make enough money, she would often take the train to places such as Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee. In 1889, she was given the nickname Princess of the Press. Then, while she was gone, she heard some terrible news that 3 Black men had been killed. One of those men was named Thomas Moss. Him and Ida had been close friends. Thomas was a letter carrier and delivered the mail to the free speech office. He also would hear news while he was on his delivery route and share the news with Ida so that she could add it to some of her news articles. Thomas and 2 other men named Calvin McDowell and Henry Stewart all ran a very successful grocery store called People's Grocery. This made white people angry, especially a man named William Barrett. Barrett owned a grocery store across the street, so he organized a mob of people to destroy People's Grocery because he was jealous of how successful that People's Grocery had become. The store owners knew that the police wouldn't help them, so they had to defend themselves. So when the mob attacked, Thomas and his friends fired their guns to scare off everyone. 3 white men were injured, and the rest fled to safety. None of the mob was arrested. However, Thomas and his friends were sent to jail. They hoped the judge would believe their testimony, but they never made it to court. Instead, a mob of white men took them from their jail cell and lynched them. After the murder of their friends, Wells launched an investigation on lynching. She analyzed specific cases through newspaper reports and police records. She also interviewed families of people they had lost to lynching mobs. She risked her life to get this information. Then in 1892, she published her findings. In response, a white mob destroyed her newspaper presses. Though she was out of town when they struck, they threatened to kill her if she ever returned to Memphis. So she decided to stay in New York. That same year, she republished her article in a pamphlet titled Southern Horrors, Lynch Law in All Its Phases. In 1895, after settling in Chicago, she built on Southern Horrors in a longer piece called The Red Record. Later, she traveled to Europe, where she rallied European outrage against racial violence in the American South, hoping that the U.S. government and public would follow their example. Unfortunately, women didn't win the right to vote until Ida was in her late 50s, and even then, the vote was primarily extended to white women only. Although she participated in the NAACP, she was sidelined. Then, later at the age of 68, on March 25th, 1993, she died from kidney disease. Ugh. What inspired me the most about Ida B. Wells is that she would fight for what she believed in, and she would risk her life to get evidence, and she really cared about her family.